Along the peaceful shores of the Sea of Galilee, where the waves whispered stories from ancient times, Jesus walked with his disciples. It was a day like many others, seemingly ordinary, but the air carried something different. The sun's rays reflected on the water, and the disciples, sitting in silence, waited with a palpable sense of anticipation. Jesus, the teacher, had spoken many times about faith, love, and redemption. However, what he was about to reveal that afternoon would transcend human understanding, touching upon the mystery of the cosmos itself. Today, Jesus began, I want to share something that goes beyond what your eyes can see and what your hearts can understand. I want to speak about the beginning of everything. His tone was deep, full of meaning, and the disciples sensed they were about to hear something grand, something that would transcend known stories and traditions. Peter, always eager, leaned forward. The beginning, Lord? How can we understand what happened at the beginning of all things, if we barely understand this world? Jesus smiled, a gentle smile full of wisdom. Yes, Peter, the beginning. Long before any of you, long before anything you can imagine, there was a moment when everything began. A moment where darkness reigned, but not an ordinary darkness. It was the absolute absence of everything you know, a profound emptiness. Yet even in that void, there was something greater, something eternal and unchanging. The wind whispered through the trees as Jesus continued. That eternal force was love. A love so pure and deep that it transcends everything we know. Before time, before creation, before matter, that love already existed. And it was from that love that everything was formed. The disciples exchanged glances, absorbing the magnitude of what Jesus was saying. The idea of a love that existed before time itself was hard to grasp, but in Jesus' words, there was a truth they could not deny. When the Creator decided to bring into existence everything we see, Jesus said, looking up to the sky, he did so with intention, with purpose. And that purpose was not just to create something beautiful, but to create something that could reflect his love. Every star, every mountain, every living being was created with that purpose. The cosmos is not just a physical structure, it is a testimony to eternal love. He paused, allowing the disciples to process what he had said. It was as if his words illuminated every star in the night sky, revealing a deeper meaning behind the very existence of the universe. Creation, he continued, is much more than what your eyes can see. What we see is only a small part of a larger plan. You know there are angels, spiritual beings, but there is much more beyond them. The physical universe you know is interconnected with the spiritual. Everything is connected, everything has a purpose. But Lord, John asked, how can creation, vast and complex as it is, be just an expression of love? Jesus looked at John, and his response came with a clarity that pierced the hearts of all present. Because love is the force that moves all things. The Creator's love is not a fleeting or limited emotion, it is the force that sustains everything. Every star that shines in the sky, every wave that crashes on the shore, every breath you take, all of it is sustained by divine love. And it is not just a distant love, but a love that is present, active, shaping every detail of existence. The disciples were silent, their minds trying to grasp the vastness of the revelation. Jesus had spoken many times about love, but never in such a cosmic, vast way. Now, he was revealing that God's love not only created the universe but also kept it in balance, sustaining it at its core. But, he said, creation was not complete. For even with all its beauty and complexity, there was something missing. And that something was redemption. The physical universe was created as an expression of love, but the ultimate purpose of that love would only be revealed through redemption. The disciples exchanged puzzled looks. Redemption? What did that have to do with the beginning of all things? You see, Jesus continued, when the Creator brought the universe into existence, he knew there would be a battle. A battle between light and darkness, between truth and falsehood. This battle began even before the world was created, in the heavenly realms, where some rebelled against the truth. But creation was the field where this battle would be resolved. The idea of a cosmic battle, a struggle between light and darkness that began before creation itself, was difficult for the disciples to absorb. They knew the stories of fallen angels, of the fight between good and evil, but now Jesus was revealing that this struggle was intricately tied to the very process of creation. When God created light, Jesus said, he did so as an act of victory. Light is not just a physical phenomenon, it is a symbol of the triumph of truth over darkness. And you, my friends, are part of this plan. You were created to be light in the world, to reflect this love and this truth that has, from the beginning, triumphed over darkness. The disciples felt the weight of his words. They were not just passive beings in a vast, incomprehensible universe. They were part of a grand plan, with a role to play in the great cosmic narrative. Redemption, Jesus continued, is not just about saving individual souls. It is about restoring the order of the entire cosmos. Just as sin corrupted humanity, it also corrupted creation. But from the beginning, the Creator's plan was always to bring redemption to all things, not just to you, but to the entire universe. Peter, who often spoke before thinking, asked with a certain unease, "Lord, if creation has been corrupted, what does that mean for the future? What will happen to everything we see around us?" Jesus looked at Peter, his eyes shining with a mix of sadness and hope. "Creation groans," he said, "like a woman in labor. It awaits redemption, just as you do. One day, the heavens and the earth will be renewed, and all of creation will be restored to its original glory. But until that day, you must be bearers of the light. You must be the ones who announce redemption, who live as witnesses to the love that gave birth to everything." The disciples sat in awe, realizing they were part of a much greater story than they had ever imagined. The universe, with all its stars, mountains, and oceans, was not just a backdrop for their lives but part of a divine plan that began with love and would end with redemption. And they, as followers of Jesus, had been called to be part of that plan, to bring light to a world in need of love and truth. "The creation groans," Jesus repeated, and his eyes gleamed with a depth of centuries that his disciples could never fully comprehend. From the beginning, it was shaped with perfection, but with the entrance of sin, everything that exists suffered a fracture. The cosmos, as vast as you see it, still feels the effects of this corruption. Yet, the purpose of redemption is more than just restoring the human heart. It is to heal all things, both visible and invisible. The disciples listened in reverent silence. Every word from Jesus not only brought a new revelation but also a vision of hope. It was as if he was inviting them to see beyond the limits of their understanding, to dive into the mystery of creation itself. "But Lord," Andrew said, his voice trembling as he searched for the words, "how can we mere men be part of something so grand? How is it possible that such small creatures in such a vast universe can play a role in this cosmic redemption?" Jesus looked at him with compassion, his gaze seeming to pierce through time and space, as if he already knew every doubt and uncertainty. "Because," he said gently, "the Creator has chosen to work through the love and faith of beings who, in their own eyes, may seem small. It is not by human power that the cosmos will be restored, but by the power that flows from God's heart through you. You are not alone. Just as the stars in the sky are held up by invisible forces, so too are you sustained by something greater than you can imagine." At these words, the disciples felt a weight lift from their shoulders. Even without fully understanding what Jesus was explaining, there was a comfort in knowing that despite their smallness, they had a vital role in the divine plan. They were more than mere spectators in a vast creation, they were active participants in the process of redemption. Jesus then turned to gaze at the horizon once more, as if he were looking beyond time and history. In the beginning, when light was called into existence, it was made not just to illuminate but to guide. You are children of that light. And as such, you are called to be light for the world. Just as creation began with light triumphing over darkness, so must you bring that light to the darkest parts of the world and even to the darkest parts of your own hearts. At that moment, the sun began to set, and the sky was tinged with orange and purple, a visible reminder of the very light and darkness Jesus spoke of. The disciples, now feeling the weight of their mission, remained silent, their minds traveling through the Master's words. How could they bring light to such a vast world? How could simple men be part of something so grand? "Remember," Jesus said, as if hearing their thoughts, "it is not by your strength that this will be accomplished, but by the power of the Spirit that dwells within you. The same Spirit that hovered over the waters at the beginning, when the world was formed, is now within each of you. He is the connection between what you see and what you cannot see, between what is physical and what is eternal." Then, in a sudden movement, Jesus raised his hands to the sky, and the disciples, following his eyes, looked up at the stars beginning to dot the heavens. "Every star in the sky," he said, "is a silent witness to the grandeur of God's plan. They were placed there not just to light up the night, but to serve as constant reminders that the universe is vast, and God's purpose is greater than we can understand. But just as the stars shine, even in darkness, so too are you called to shine." Peter, who always saw himself as strong and full of initiative, felt for the first time the true weight of the responsibility Jesus was placing on him and his brothers. It was a responsibility that went beyond teaching and healing. Now he understood that every action, every word he spoke, would be part of something much greater, something that connected heaven and earth. Jesus then turned to Peter and said, "You, Peter, will be a rock upon which I will build my church. But remember, this church is not just a structure of bricks and stones. It is part of my body, connected to everything that exists. What you do on this earth will resonate in the cosmos. Your choices, your actions, your faith, all of it is part of the great story being written since the beginning." Peter, stunned by the depth of these words, felt a mix of fear and humility. How could he, a simple fisherman, bear such a responsibility? Yet in his eyes, there was a spark of confidence, as if the Spirit Jesus mentioned was beginning to move within him, preparing him for the great task ahead. Seeing the impact of his words on his disciples' hearts, Jesus gave one final teaching that afternoon. Creation is vastly complex, yet incredibly simple in its purpose, to reveal the love of God. And you, my friends, are the hands and feet that will spread that love. You will do this not just with words, but with actions, with your lives. At this point, he paused, allowing the weight of these final words to settle in their hearts. The silence was almost tangible, filled only by the soft sound of the waves crashing on the shore. Each disciple knew they were being given an immense responsibility, but they also knew they were being guided by a force beyond themselves. Finally, Jesus broke the silence, this time with a softer, more comforting tone. Remember, wherever you go, the Creator will be with you. You are not alone on this journey, and the story that began at the dawn of time will be concluded with the same love with which it began. You are connected to something greater. The cosmos, with all its stars, planets, and wonders, is just the backdrop for the greatest story ever told, the story of God's love for His creation. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon and the stars dominated the sky, the disciples, one by one, stood up and followed Jesus, knowing their lives would never be the same again. Their journey was now not just about the redemption of their own souls, but about the redemption of all creation. They were bearers of the light that had, from the beginning, shone in the darkness. As night deepened, the sky over the Sea of Galilee became a vast ocean of stars. The disciples walked alongside Jesus in silence, each reflecting on the revelations they had heard. The universe, which had once seemed distant and mysterious to them, now pulsed with meaning. God's love permeated everything, from the waves of the sea to the luminous points twinkling in the firmament. They began to understand that every small part of creation, even those that seemed insignificant to human eyes, had an important role in the larger plan. Jesus continued walking, but his mind seemed to be elsewhere, as if in communion with something beyond time and space. Then he suddenly stopped, as though listening to an invisible call. The disciples gathered around him, waiting for him to speak. There was a gentle tension in the air, as if the universe itself were attentive to what he would say. Creation was not a one-time event, Jesus said, breaking the silence with a calm yet powerful voice. It continues, expands, and moves. Just as the Creator sustains all things, you, as children of light, are also called to participate in this ongoing work. Everything you do, every action, every word, carries within it the potential to bring life or death, light or darkness. His eyes swept over the faces of the disciples, and they knew that these words were both a teaching and a warning. The cosmos, with all its wonders and mysteries, was the stage upon which the story of redemption was being written. And they had a central role in that story. Jesus turned to Matthew, the tax collector who had left his life of wealth to follow him. Matthew, he said, you understand the power of words. Writing, recording, telling stories, these are your tools in the battle we are fighting. When you bear witness to the truth, you are helping to shape the very destiny of the cosmos. Matthew nodded, absorbing the depth of the responsibility given to him. The words he had always used to collect taxes and keep records would now be used to spread the light, to tell the most important story of all. Next, Jesus turned to John, the beloved disciple, who always seemed to have a deeper connection with spiritual mysteries. John, you perceive what others have not yet fully grasped. You realize that love is not merely a concept but the very substance of creation. When you speak, when you write, you are revealing this love to the world. Your role is to show that the Creator's love is not just a passive force, but the force that moves all things. John felt a deep calm invade his heart. He had always sensed something special in Jesus' words, something beyond human understanding. Now he knew that this feeling was the truth of the love that sustained the cosmos. And what about me, Lord? Thomas asked, his voice revealing a mix of doubt and curiosity. If all this is true, if the universe is so vast and complex, how can I be sure? How can I myself fully believe without seeing with my own eyes? Jesus looked at Thomas with infinite compassion, understanding the internal struggles he faced. Thomas, your doubt does not separate you from God's love but brings you closer. The Creator is not afraid of your questions or uncertainties. In fact, He welcomes them, for it is through them that you will find the truth. One day, you will see with your own eyes what you can only imagine now. But until then, know that faith is not blindness. Faith is a trust in the love that shapes the universe, even when we cannot see all the details. Thomas lowered his head, deeply reflecting on Jesus' words. He had always felt more rational, more cautious, but now he understood that faith was a way of seeing beyond what his eyes could reach. Jesus was not asking him to abandon his questions, but to allow the search for truth to guide him to a greater understanding. And then Jesus looked again at the starry sky. Do you see these stars? Each one represents a promise. They shine with the light of something greater, a constant reminder that the plan of redemption is underway. Even in the darkest moments, the light will always be present, no matter how small. And just as these stars shine, even in darkness, so must you shine in the world, carrying the truth and love you have received. Peter, who had remained silent until then, finally gathered the courage to speak. Lord, I feel the weight of your words, but also the weight of my own failings. How can I, who have so often erred, be part of something so grand? How can I carry this light when there are still so many shadows within me? Jesus approached Peter and placed a hand on his shoulder. Peter, it is not about the perfection you seek, but the grace you receive. The Creator does not choose the perfect to accomplish His plan. He chooses those who, despite their flaws, are willing to rise and move forward. You will be a rock upon which I will build something immense, not because you never make mistakes, but because you have learned to trust in the grace that sustains everything. Peter, with tears in his eyes, nodded. He had learned, through his failures, that God's power was not manifested in the absence of mistakes but in the willingness to continue, even after falling. Jesus looked at the disciples once more, now with a serene calm on his face. Remember that the cosmos is not only vast in size but also in time. You are living a part of the story, but the complete story is still being written. And every act of faith, of love, of compassion you perform is like a new star lighting up the firmament. One day, when everything is completed, the universe will shine with the light of every act of goodness, every gesture of forgiveness, every word of hope. Jesus' words penetrated deep into the hearts of his disciples. They realized that what they were hearing was not just a message for them, but for all who would come after. Each generation would have its role to play in the great cosmic story, and the legacy they left would be part of the eternal brilliance of creation. And now, Jesus said, let us return to the city. There is still much to be done, and the time for this work is now. You have the tools, you have the truth, and above all, you have love. Move forward with confidence, knowing that the Creator is with you every step of the way. The disciples stood up, each carrying with them a new understanding of the purpose of their lives. They now knew that they were not just fishermen, tax collectors, or ordinary men. They were bearers of divine light, part of a plan that transcended time and space. As they followed Jesus back to the city, the sky above continued to shine, a constant reminder that the cosmos, and the human heart, were intertwined in a story of love and redemption, from the very beginning of all things. As the disciples and Jesus approached the city, the brilliance of the stars seemed to fade beneath the lights of the houses and streets of Jerusalem. The vastness of the cosmos, which moments earlier had enveloped them in the field, now gave way to the immediate reality of human life, with its problems and daily concerns. Yet, the words of Jesus remained alive in their hearts. They knew that what they had learned was not just for that moment, it was something they would carry with them for the rest of their lives, a truth that would shape their actions moving forward. Entering the narrow streets, the sounds of the night market and the bustle of people filled the air once more. The disciples noticed the immediate difference. Where they had been immersed in contemplating the heavens and eternity, they were now facing earthly reality. Nevertheless, as Jesus had said, the cosmos and daily life were closely linked. What happened in the hearts of people impacted not only their own lives but resonated throughout the universe. You can feel the tension, Jesus said softly as they walked. People here are caught up in their routines, their daily struggles. They hardly realize they are part of something much larger. Yet, even the smallest actions they perform, when done with love, have a profound impact. With every act of kindness, with every choice of compassion, they help heal the wounds of the cosmos. The disciples, observing the people passing by, began to see with new eyes. The vendor who patiently served his customers, the mother comforting her young child, the man helping his neighbor carry a heavy load, each of these simple gestures was now seen in a new light. They were not just isolated acts, they were contributions to the grand work of creation, a participation in the process of redemption that Jesus had described. Upon arriving at the house where they usually gathered, Jesus sat in the center of the group and invited them to do the same. The familiar setting seemed different to the disciples, as if now they were aware of something that had always been there but that they could only now perceive. I want you to remember one thing, Jesus said, looking at each of them. No matter how vast the universe is, or how small you may feel sometimes, the most important work you will do will be here, in this place, with these people. You have been called to serve, to love, to teach. And it is through these small acts that the kingdom of God will be established on earth. Jesus' words brought comfort and a new sense of purpose to the disciples. They had spent so much time trying to understand the deep mysteries Jesus revealed to them that now they understood that the true depth lay in the simplicity of living these teachings in everyday life. Jesus then spoke again, this time with a sense of urgency. You must not forget the battle that is being fought. It is not a battle against flesh and blood, but against invisible forces trying to separate creation from its creator. The darkness you see in the world, the suffering, the injustice, the evil, are reflections of this struggle. But know that in every act of kindness, you are winning this battle. Every time you choose love over hate, light over darkness, the cosmos responds. The disciples began to realize that, although the universe was vast, the true battle was not fought between stars and galaxies but in the hearts of men. And they, simple fishermen and ordinary men, were at the center of this battle. They were not merely participants, they were warriors in the fight for the redemption of all creation. Then Jesus turned to Mary Magdalene, who had remained silent during the entire journey back to the city. His eyes fixed on her with a gaze full of love and understanding. "Mary," he said, "you know what it is to bear a heavy burden, but you also know what it is to be freed. Your life is a testament that, even in the deepest darkness, the light can enter and transform everything. You will be one of my most powerful witnesses, for people will see in you the transformation that the love of God can bring." Mary Magdalene smiled, her hands trembling slightly as she held Jesus' gaze. She knew that more than anything else, her own story was a story of redemption. She had experienced the depths of pain and darkness but now lived in the light. And that light was not just for her but for everyone she met on her journey. Jesus then turned to everyone present and said, "You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. Likewise, no one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket. You have been called to shine, and what you do, no matter how small it seems, will impact not only here but all of creation." The disciples felt the weight and glory of this calling. They knew that from that moment on, they could no longer live as they had before. Every word they spoke, every decision they made, would have consequences extending beyond their own lives. It was as if the vastness of the cosmos, which had once seemed distant and indifferent, was now directly connected to what they did. "But Lord," James asked, "how can we keep this light burning in us when the world around us seems so dark? How can we continue to shine when we face opposition, difficulties, and our own failures?" Jesus smiled at him, as if he had been expecting this question. "The light does not come from yourselves," he replied. "It comes from the Spirit that dwells in you. You are the vessels, the bearers of this light. And even when you seem weak, it is in those moments that God's power is revealed. When you feel unable to go on, remember that you are not alone. The Spirit will strengthen you, guide you, and empower you to fulfill the mission you have been given." The disciples nodded, feeling a renewed vigor in their hearts. They now understood that their strength was not in their own abilities but in what God was doing through them. They were part of something much larger, something that transcended their human limitations. And so, that night, as the stars shone outside and the city slept around them, Jesus continued to teach. He spoke about the need to stay united, to love one another as he had loved them, to forgive, to serve, to be humble. Each word he spoke seemed to carry the weight of the universe, and at the same time, the simplicity of a loving father speaking to his children. By the end of the night, when silence had settled in, the disciples knew they had received something they could never forget. They were now part of a cosmic story, a story that had begun at the beginning of all things and would continue until the end of time. They were bearers of the light, and what they did from that moment on would impact not only their own lives but the very destiny of creation. Seeing that they were ready, Jesus looked at them with tenderness and said, "You are prepared. Now, go and do what I have taught you. Remember, I will be with you, always, until the end of time." And with these words, Jesus stood up, and the disciples followed him. Their journey was just beginning, but now they knew they would never be alone. They were part of something greater, something eternal. The cosmos awaited them, and they were ready to shine.